Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I know I haven't posted in a little while, but I'm now set up in my new house. I have a special room where I can film and write, and we've got some bangers on the way. So be sure to stay tuned, subscribe. If you're new here, hi. I make videos about art history, art theory, contemporary art, all that stuff. And today I'm going to be giving 5 books that art students should read. But obviously you don't have to be an art student to read them. If you're just someone who likes art, these books right here may be of interest to you. I picked these books because not only are they really good, and each and every one has shaped my understanding of art in a really profound way, but also very accessible. You can read them without too much, like needing too much background knowledge, and they'll make sense and they will widen and enrich your appreciation of art. So with that being said, we're going to get into the books. First book, which I think every art student should read, is called Ways of Seeing by John Berger. And realistically, if you're studying art in the UK, they probably already made you read this book. It's kind of a very big deal in art school culture here. I have a mixed relationship with this book. I made a whole book review on it, and I argued that the book's overrated, and I don't know, like, I have a love and hate relationship with it. What I think John Berger, the writer, does really well is he ties art theory together with anti-capitalism in a way which is like awesome, and it's not like pretentious, like it makes sense. The things he's saying, you're like, yeah, that's legit. And I really like that. On the other hand, I think his tone comes across a little bit arrogant sometimes when he's writing. And he does these things called like picture essays, where he like just shows you loads of pictures and it's supposed to be an essay. And I find these frustrating and I find them pretentious. But whether you like this book or dislike this book, I think it's really important that you have an opinion on this book. So I do think every single art student should read it. The next book I'd like to recommend is a bit of another like old school classic. It's called The Shock of the New. It was written by Robert Hughes. I think he wrote it in 1980, but I could have just made that fact up. And what Robert Hughes does best, he understands and explains modernism and all the isms. So modernism is a period of art which started in the late 1860s, let's say, and finished around the mid 1900s. It was defined by this sense of progress and this obsession with newness, and it's all the isms like Dadaism, Surrealism, Cubism. All of those come under the branch of modernism, and Robert Hughes understands modernism and the isms really well. He understands the historical factors which led to them. He understands the psychology of the artists. What I love about art history is it's kind of like stories, and he tells these stories really well. He understands the main players, and he helped me to understand all these isms in just a slightly deeper way than other books were able to. You can really feel his interest in, not his interest, it's like he writes with a bit of flair. It's hard to explain, but I'd really recommend this book. Nice big pictures. So it is a big book. It's a bit scary, but you've got pictures, which in my opinion helps. You can see I've highlighted this more highlighted than not. To give the book some context and criticism, it is mostly a white Western male-centered story. So he has excluded the majority of the world's population from this book, which is very disappointing, but it's like most of art history has done that. We're only getting to a point now where art historians are undoing that. Surprisingly in a good way, Robert Hughes criticizes Picasso for culturally appropriating African masks. And that's not something I would expect from an old school art historian, but he does. He actually criticizes Picasso for doing that. And I think that's kind of cool. Also, Robert Hughes kind of tries to summarize contemporary art, which you would define as like art from the 1960s onwards. He's not as good at doing that. You get the sense that he thinks that contemporary art's a con, or it's like a trick or something, and he's very cynical about it. And it's a shame because he writes so well about modern art and classical art, but because maybe he was a bit older in his life, he wasn't quite as open-minded to these new forms of art which arrived in the 1960s, like performance art or conceptual art, or even later than that, like he despises Jeff Koons, which is quite funny. But I think it's just not good writing because he's too cynical. His brain is too clouded when he talks about contemporary art, which is a shame, but every writer has their strengths and every writer has their weaknesses. I would take from this book the really great explanations of the isms, but I would remain critical of his lack of understanding about contemporary art and his lack of inclusivity when it comes to anyone who's not a white man. With that being said, I do believe that one of the most important challenges of art historians today is to basically rewrite the story of art in a way which includes non-white men into the story, because obviously non-white men artists have always existed and we have ignored them for a very, very long time, and now we have to go back. We have to find out who they were, why they were significant, and we have to weave them back into the story, which is a big challenge. And with that in mind, I'd like to recommend The Story of Art Without Men, which was written by Katie Hessel. I think it came out in 2021 or 2020, so it's quite a new book. Yeah, this book pretty much just does what it says on the tin. It's the story of art, but excluding men. So it's entirely female in an inclusive sense, of trans and non-binary people included. Hey guys, sorry to butt in like this. I was just editing the video and I realised that I kind of messed up my words a bit there. So the book is inclusive towards women and trans women, but it's also inclusive towards non-binary people. But in the video, it kind of sounds like I'm implying that non-binary people are women, but that's not what I was implying. I think words are just really difficult, especially when the camera's on, and it just came out a bit weird, but that's not what I meant. So enjoy the video. And I really enjoyed this book because, again, it's like art history is just story time, and there's so many great stories in this book. And like, I'm going to be honest, this book made me realize there are some major gaps in my knowledge of female artists. Like, I like to pride myself on like knowing quite a lot about art history, but there were very, very important artists in this book who I either didn't know about or only knew a tiny amount about. And I'm grateful to this book and to Katie Hessel because it's helped me create a more rounded knowledge of art history, which is inclusive. And quite frankly, it was just a great book. Like, I particularly enjoyed reading about Hilma af Klint, Georgia O'Keeffe. Who else did I enjoy? I don't know. But anyway, again, it's a big book, but it's got lots of pictures, nice sized font, all that good stuff. Nice, like, I don't know, designy pages. It starts in the Renaissance and it takes you through till present day, which is really, really cool. And I really enjoyed reading it. One observation, or I guess maybe like frustration, is that the book is quite expensive and it's only available in hardback at the moment. So I'm a cheapskate and I tend to buy my books like secondhand or stuff like that. But this book, I've wanted to read it since it came out, and I was kind of waiting for a paperback to come out that might be a bit cheaper, because in the UK this is £30, which is a lot for a book. In the end, like, obviously I've got this YouTube channel, I want to talk about these books, I want to access this information, so I bought the book. But alongside making art history more inclusive and making art history represent everyone within society, I think we also need to make sure that that art history is accessible to the widest number of people possible. And I feel like it's a shame that some people would have been priced out of reading this book because it's only available at £30, which is quite a lot more expensive than most books in the UK. I'm hoping a paperback copy comes out soon. Like, I did look it up. I didn't see anything on the internet about that, but yeah, but I still would, like, if you've got £30 to spare, I would definitely recommend this book. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, so next up, this book's not actually it's not really an art history and art theory book, but it's a book that's very dear to me, and I think it's a book which helped me understand how to think about art and how to write about art in a lot of ways. It's Just Kids by Patti Smith, and this book is it's like an autobiography of the rock star and poet Patti Smith, and it talks about her life in the 1960s and 70s when she was dating the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe. It talks about their relationship, it talks about their art and their poetry and their music, and it kind of paints this picture of this bohemian creative New York City in the 60s and 70s and all the important people they come across, and coming across Andy Warhol and Jimi Hendrix, and talking about the influence of Bob Dylan. And there's a lot of things I love about this book. Actually, I made an entire video talking about how much I love this book. I talked about it for like 15 minutes, but just to summarize, like, it's very romantic and it's very poetic. And I think when we talk about art, we should be those things. There's no point being like really rational about it or really like a bit ironic about it, because we love art because it talks to us on an emotional level in a way that other things can't, or in a kind of like in a softer way. And I think we need to develop language around art that is poetic or romantic or kind of not even that rational, but still quite meaningful. And Patti Smith did that really well. And you kind of do learn art history reading this, because all the characters in this book are so relevant and significant in the story of art history. You learn a lot about Robert Mapplethorpe, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I'd highly recommend. It's probably my favorite book ever, and it's quite an easy read. You can flow through it very easily. Yeah, I'd recommend that. The last book recommendation I have for you today is actually not a book recommendation, but I recommend you check out the writings of the White Pube. They're like a duo of art critics in the UK. This is their zine, which I've got, which if you're in the UK, you can probably get your hands on this. They normally sell it in gallery bookshops, but most of their writing is available on Instagram or on their website or on Twitter. And I love the White Pube because most art criticism or art writing is incredibly wishy-washy, and it's written by people who are really out of touch, and it's designed to preserve the status quo. It's designed by people who have a bit of power and they don't want things to change. And the White Pube are the complete opposite of that. They write in a very kind of blunt way, which is down to earth, and they're really genuinely interested in creating change in the art world, creating an art world which is less elitist and more inclusive and just generally richer. Like we all see the art world as this pretentious place, which is like, it's a world of closed doors where people who are in the inner circle get to celebrate themselves and make these crap exhibitions that no one likes, and everyone else is excluded. And the White Pube have been writing about that for years in a way which is accessible and genuinely really powerful. I honestly think elite cultural institutions are scared of the White Pube and they don't want to attract their attention because they have a lot of social influence, especially amongst like my generation and a younger generation. And they don't want that heat because they know they will get ripped to shreds. I hope that made sense. I feel like I was not doing a very good job explaining this, but I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I first encountered the White Pube and why I connected with them. So when I was like fresh out of art school, like 2017, 2018, I was offered this like opportunity to do an unpaid internship with the Victoria Mirror Gallery, and obviously that in itself requires a certain level of privilege because you have to be able to give away days where you're not working to work at the Victoria Mirror Gallery. So in a lot of ways that was a privilege, but it was the worst. It was like the worst working experience I've ever had. Like, everyone was so unfriendly and cold. The gallery stunk of money, yet they wouldn't even pay for my tube fare into work and back. I was very like, it's not unappreciated. That's not even the word, but like, I felt uncomfortable asking for help, and I felt like whenever I asked a question, people would like huff and puff, and I think that is just the culture in these private galleries in London. I don't think that's anything unique. I didn't last. I did like 2 weeks and I like stormed out because they tried to make me bring some wine to the director's house. He lived in like Bloomsbury, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not learning anything here. This is horrible. I think I cried. I did cry. I don't think I cried. I definitely cried. I left crying and then never came back. And my next job was, I was like a barista at the Institute of Contemporary Arts. And over time, I noticed that the directors and the curators, they'd come down for their coffees, and I just noticed they weren't very polite. Like, they would never say thank you after I served them. And I remember like sometimes I'd walk behind them because there's corridors and stuff. They wouldn't hold the doors open, and it was slowly dawning on me that the art world was not an inspiring place. It was a place full of defensive people who just wanted to keep their job and keep everything the same because they had a pretty sweet gig, but they didn't want anyone else to get in on what they had. And I remember like one day I was forced to work late at the bar because the director wanted to have more drinks. He was like super drunk, being really rude. He started smoking inside, and it really dawned on me that this is just not a it's not something I want to aspire to be part of. It sucks. This sucks, and I'm being mistreated. And around that time, my partner sent me a link to an article by the White Pube called, and it was like in capital letters, "I literally hate the art world." And I remember reading that article, and I think it came to me at the perfect time, where I was, because I'd always dreamed of working in the art world, I was finding it hard to articulate like how terrible this world is, and this economy is, and this like the way in which people are treated in this industry. Like I didn't feel good about my job, but I also hadn't come to the point where I was like, I hate this. This is horrible. And reading this article by the White Pube, it really articulated it, and it made me feel comfortable being like, no, this is horrible and I don't want to be here anymore. And soon after that, I stopped working in galleries and I went and did some other things, and then I became an art teacher, and now I'm doing this. But I'm very, very grateful to the White Pube for writing that article. And what's really funny is I actually sent them an email at the time, just because I'm adorable, telling them that I resonated with the text. And I dug up that email. It's titled, "You Guys Are Legends." And I wrote, "Hello, I met you briefly and awkwardly at the ICA. I work there, and I told you I recognized you because I'd seen your YouTube channel. I read your recent text about why you hate the art world. I loved it and I needed to read it. I was/am feeling alienated and uninspired, and your text summarized it fantastically. If you're ever in the ICA again, you can count on me to get a free coffee and a brownie. Lots of love, Tom." And I got a reply. "Hiya, Tom. This is such a nice email. Glad the text resonated. Should be around the ICA a bit in the new year. I'll take up the offer for free food. Best, ZM." So yeah, definitely check them out. And I have heard rumors that they're publishing a book soon. So whenever that comes out, I recommend you buy it. I'll review it on here and I'll remind you. So yeah, also it's kind of ironic because like I'm definitely a middle class person with privilege. And a lot of what the White Pube write about is the art world being too full of middle class people with privilege. But I don't know, they resonate with me, and I'm going to keep following them. I really, really appreciate what they do, and I recognize that it is a problem. So yeah. So I'm really, really grateful to the White Pube because they made me realize that art criticism can be fun, political, and interesting. Check them out on Instagram and Twitter and all that. Okay, so those are my 5 books that I recommend you read if you're at art school or if you're just interested in art. Also, if you have an upcoming interview for a fine art course or a foundation course, it would really, really impress the interviewers if you told them that you'd read one of these books or any of these books. So there's lots of reasons to read it. Also, they're brilliant books. Just read them. What 5 books would you recommend to art students? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.